Evelyn Hart reached Red Ash Junction with one trunk, one mare, and one letter that said Grant Maddox had asked for a wife. Dawson Kells reached for the mare before he reached for the letter. "Cancellation debt," he said, closing his fist around Juniper's lead rope. "If Maddox will not take the bride, the agency takes the horse against passage." If she could not keep Juniper today, she could not leave Red Ash tomorrow. Kells knew it. So did every man watching the rope. Juniper threw her head and struck sparks from the packed dirt. Men in the horse pen jumped back. Mrs. Eva Rusk, the agency matron who had ridden beside Evelyn for 2 days, did not move except to fold Evelyn's receipt into her black purse. Evelyn caught the loose end of the rope before Juniper could rear. "Easy," she said, not loud, not sweet, just certain. "Stand, Juniper." The mare's ears flicked back to Evelyn's voice. Her front hooves came down. Dust rose around her legs. Evelyn kept one hand low, palm open, because a frightened horse did not need another fight. Kells laughed for the pen hands watching from the fence. "Pretty trick. Shame it will not pay what you owe." A rejected bride with no horse was not a woman choosing her future. She was freight waiting for the next man's price. "I owe no man here," Evelyn said. "My name is Evelyn Hart. I am 27 years old. I paid my passage to answer Grant Maddox's letter. If Mr. Maddox has changed his mind, I have returned terms." Mrs. Rusk looked at the dust instead of Evelyn. Terms change when a bride is rejected at delivery. The word rejected moved through the pen faster than Juniper's panic. A hostler stopped chewing. 2 boys at the water trough leaned over the rail. A woman could be insulted in many ways on a frontier road, but this one put a price tag on her shame and called it business. Kells tugged the lead again. Juniper's neck tightened. Evelyn stepped with the mare, not against her. "Take your hand off my horse." "You came under a rancher's name," Kells said. "If he will not have you, something pays." "She is not a saddle blanket," a man said from behind him. The voice was low, but the pen heard it. Grant Maddox stood at the gate with his hat pulled down and trailed dust on his coat. He was broader than Evelyn had expected from his letter, older in the eyes than in the hand that had written careful words about a horse ranch, hard winters, plain work, and no false finery. A pale scar cut through his left eyebrow. He did not look at Evelyn first. He looked at Kells' hand on Juniper's rope. "Let go," Grant said. Kells turned with a grin already prepared. "You are late to your own rejection." "I said let go. Agency rule says if you refuse her at delivery, transport debt falls due." "I have not refused her." The watching men grew quiet. Evelyn felt every eye swing from Kells to Grant, and then to her. Hope was dangerous when it came too fast. She held Juniper's lead in both hands and made herself breathe, as if hope had not moved at all. Grant came through the gate. Juniper shifted toward Evelyn, then stilled when Grant stopped short of crowding her. "Miss Hart," he said, "did anyone tell you I changed the terms?" "Mrs. Rusk told me you might not receive me after all." "Did she tell you why?" "No." Grant's jaw moved once. "Because Dawson Kells has been trying to break my Remount trial before the Army buyers ride in tomorrow. He would like Red Ash to believe I ordered a bride for a horse contract and threw her away at the pen." "You did write to the agency," Evelyn said. "I did." That answer cut more sharply than any denial. It made him honest and dangerous both. Grant looked at her then. Not at her bonnet or the dust on her skirt or the red shame trying to climb her throat. He looked at her face the way a man looked at a horse coming out of bad weather, careful not to mistake fear for weakness. "I wrote because Barlo Spur is not a gentle place," he said. "Because I thought a wife ought to know that before she came. Then my brother was hurt in a stampede, and I sent a cancellation before the agency wagon left Cheyenne. Mrs. Rusk says she never received it." Mrs. Rusk's mouth tightened. Kells snorted, "Convenient." "Very," Grant said, "for you." He reached for Juniper's lead, then stopped and looked at Evelyn. "May I?" That one question did what all Mrs. Rusk's papers had not. It gave the rope back to Evelyn before anyone touched it. She passed him the slack. Grant lifted the rope out of Kell's fist without jerking it. "The mare stays with her." "You will pay the cancellation then." "No." "Then you accept the bride." Grant's eyes sharpened. No man accepts a woman like he accepts a crate. The pen went silent again. He turned to Evelyn. "I cannot ask you to marry me in a horse pen with Dawson Kells making a show of your fear. I will not reject you here either. Barlo Spur has a safe room in the small bunkhouse, women at the wash line by day, and a road back when you choose it. If you come unclaimed. If you leave, I drive you myself when the south coach runs." Kells spread his hands. "Hear that? He wants the advantage of taking her without the honor of naming her." Grant did not look away from Evelyn. "You will decide whether my terms have honor." Mrs. Rusk moved then. "Miss Hart, if you leave this junction with him, the agency may mark you in breach." Evelyn had crossed 3 states with that woman's promises tucked beside her ticket. She had believed the hard seat, the thin meals, and the narrow looks were the price of a new life. Now she saw the truth plainly. Mrs. Rusk had guarded the agency purse, not Evelyn. "If I leave Juniper with Mr. Kells," Evelyn said, "what do you mark that?" Mrs. Rusk did not answer. Grant did, theft dressed as policy. Evelyn looked at the scar over his brow, then at his hand holding Juniper without tightening the rope. He was not gentle in the soft way. He was controlled in the costly way, as if every quiet move took work. "I will see Barlo Spur," she said. Kell's grin faded. Grant gave her the lead rope back. That was the first thing he returned to her. Not a promise, not a pretty word, the rope. They left Red Ash with Juniper tied behind Grant's wagon and Evelyn's trunk beside the seat. Mrs. Rusk stood by the agency wagon with her purse clutched shut. Kells watched from the pen rail, one thumb hooked in his belt, his eyes already counting what he meant to take next. The road to Barlo Spur ran through open grass and low red cuts of earth. No snow, no town crowd, no church bell, only wind, sage, and the creak of harness. Grant drove with both hands on the lines. Evelyn sat with her gloved fingers folded around the letter that had brought her west. "Your cancellation," she said after a mile. "Did you truly send it?" "Yes." "Because of your brother." Grant looked at the team. "Because I had no right to bring a woman into a ranch I could not keep steady." "That is not the same as not wanting a wife." The team pulled uphill. For a moment she thought he would not answer. "No," he said, "it is not." That honesty warmed nothing. It only made the cold inside her more complicated. "Kell said transport debt falls due," she said. "Can he make that true?" "He can make men act as if it is true. Around here, that is enough until someone stops him." "And you mean to stop him?" "I mean to keep you and your mare from paying for my fight." "You already made us part of it." He took that like a deserved blow. "Yes." Evelyn looked back at Juniper. The mare traveled better now, head low, one ear turned to the wagon. She had been Evelyn's father's last gift before fever took him, a rangy bay with a white star and more sense than half the men Evelyn had met since Omaha. Selling Juniper would have left Evelyn with a trunk, a letter, and no way to leave any place that turned unsafe. "Then tell me the fight," she said. Grant exhaled. "Army buyers need 40 saddle horses by week's end. Mine are sound but green. Kells has numbers, rough men, and a pen lease at Red Ash. If I fail the trial tomorrow, Kells gets the contract and Barlo Spur loses winter credit." "Why does he need me?" "He does not need you. He needs the story of you. The rejected bride, the rancher without judgment. The man who cannot keep a woman safe should not be trusted with Remount horses." By noon tomorrow, that story would either die in a horse pen or become the reason Barlo Spur lost winter credit. The plainness of it steadied her. A lie had shape once named. "And your brother?" Grant's hands tightened on the lines. "Owen stepped into a blind alley during a run last spring. Horse hit the rail, rail hit him. He walks with a cane now. He says he forgave me. He should not have." "Were you at the gate?" "I chose the gate." That was all he said, but it told her enough. Since then, every gate at Barlo Spur had probably been a wound he could touch. The ranch appeared near sundown, low buildings against a sweep of pasture, corrals built in long, clean lines, and a mare lot set apart from the main remuda. A woman at the wash line lifted her head. 2 wranglers stopped mending a rail. A lean foreman with silver in his beard came out of the barn and looked first at Evelyn, then at Juniper, then at Grant as if Grant had ridden home with a lit match. "This is Jessup Vale," Grant said. "Jess, Miss Evelyn Hart." Jessup touched his hat, but not warmly. "We heard Kells had a bride at the pen." "Kells had his hand on her mare," Grant said. Jessup's face changed. Not enough for apology, enough for caution. Grant climbed down and reached for Evelyn's trunk. "I can carry that," Evelyn said. He let go of the handle at once. Jessup saw it, so did the wranglers. Evelyn carried her trunk herself across the yard. It was heavier than Pride, but not by much. Grant opened the small bunkhouse at the east end. It had 2 rooms divided by a plank wall, a clean cot, a washstand, and a window that looked toward the mare lot. There was a latch on the inside. "This room was the book room before Owen took his accounts to the house," Grant said. "No one enters unless you invite them. Juniper stays in the mare lot. The south coach comes through Red Ash in 4 days if weather holds." Evelyn set the trunk down, and until then, "You owe no work for shelter." "I did not come west to sit and be protected." His mouth almost moved, not a smile, the beginning of one. "Then tomorrow you can tell me whether my lead mare hates me or only thinks me foolish." "Both can be true." This time the smile arrived, quick and surprised. It changed his face so sharply that Evelyn had to look down at her gloves. "Supper in half an hour," he said. "Mrs. Teague cooks for the crew. She will not fuss, but she will feed you." "Mr. Maddox." He stopped at the door. "If you mean what you said at the pen, do not tell your men I am only a guest." "What should I tell them?" "Tell them I am deciding." His gaze held hers. "That is the truth," he said. At supper, Mrs. Teague put stew in front of Evelyn without a question. The crew asked enough with their eyes. Jessup asked with his mouth. "You ever work around horses, Miss Hart?" "All my life." Agency brides say many things on paper. Grant's spoon stopped. 2 men looked down at their bowls as if the insult had not been spoken. That made it worse. Evelyn answered before he could. "So do foremen, I expect." One wrangler choked on his coffee. Jessup's brows rose, fair. "My father traded saddle horses in Missouri," Evelyn said. "I gentled 3 of his mares after he took sick. I can sit a horse, read bad handling, bind a shallow cut, and keep my hands off a frightened animal until it asks for them. I cannot rope like a range man. I will not pretend I can, and I do not make horses braver by beating fear into them." Across the table, Grant looked at her as if each plain sentence had moved something heavy out of his way. Jessup leaned back. "That last part may make trouble here." "Good," Evelyn said. After supper, Grant took her to the mare lot. The lead mare stood apart from the others, a deep chestnut with a black mane and a white heel. Mercy, Grant called her. She watched him come and did not move away, but her ears flattened when a bucket clanged near the barn. "She was in the alley when Owen was hurt," Grant said. "She has not led clean since." Evelyn stood outside the fence. "Who handles her from the right?" Grant looked at her. "No one, why?" "She watches that side like pain lives there." Grant did not defend himself. That made her trust him more than if he had offered a reason. "May I go in?" she asked. "She can strike." I asked, "May I, not is it safe?" He opened the gate, but he did not follow. That mattered because men who wanted control often dressed it as help. Evelyn entered the lot with a brush hanging loose in her hand. Mercy backed 2 steps. Evelyn stopped. The mare blew hard. Evelyn looked away, then moved to the rail and brushed dust from the top board as if the board were the reason she had come. The wranglers gathered by the barn. Jessup muttered that this was no time for parlor tricks. Mercy took 1 step toward Evelyn. Evelyn kept brushing the rail. Another step. "That mare has not come to a stranger in 8 months," Mrs. Teague whispered from behind the wash line. Evelyn did not turn. She held the brush low and let Mercy smell it. When the mare allowed 1 slow pass across her neck, Evelyn felt the whole yard breathe. At the far ridge, a rider paused long enough to count the horses before turning away. Then Kell's rider came over the rise. He wore a yellow scarf and rode a gray gelding with a hard mouth. He did not dismount. "Message for Maddox," he called. "Feed price at Red Ash doubled. Pen lease due before trial. Also Mrs. Rusk says Miss Hart is in agency breach." Mercy jerked at the voice. Evelyn lowered the brush and stepped back before the mare could feel trapped. Grant came to the fence. "Tell Kells to bring his own lies next time." "He said you would say that," the rider grinned. "He also said the buyers arrive at noon, and they will hear how you took an agency woman without settling account." Evelyn felt heat rise in her face, not shame this time, anger. Grant looked at her through the fence. "This is not yours to answer." "It became mine when he put my name on it." Jessup spat into the dust. "Boss, we cannot feed 40 head at double price and fight a bride case." "There is no bride case," Grant said. But that night, someone slashed 6 feed sacks in the hay shed. Evelyn woke to shouting before dawn. By the time she reached the shed, grain lay across the floor like pale sand. Jessup stood over it with a lantern. 2 wranglers cursed. Grant knelt beside a sack and held the cut edges apart. "Knife," he said. Jessup looked toward Evelyn before he could stop himself. Grant saw it. "Say what you mean," Grant said. Jessup's weathered face tightened. "I mean Kells was quiet until she came. I mean the men will think what men think when their winter wages ride on a trial." Evelyn stepped into the shed. "Then let them think where I can hear." Jessup looked ashamed, then stubborn. "Did you see anyone?" "No." "Then we have cut feed, a rival ready to profit, and an agency woman he can use as smoke." Grant stood. "Her name is Evelyn." "Names do not feed horses." Evelyn bent and picked up something half buried in the grain. It was a twisted strip of rawhide with small dried burrs caught in the weave, sharp enough to make skin jump if pulled under a strap. "Do your men use these?" she asked. Jessup's face changed. Grant took it carefully. "No." "Kells Gray had rub marks under the cinch," Evelyn said. "Same side. Mercy fears her right side. Someone has been making horses panic and calling them wild." One of the young wranglers crossed himself. "That is a dirty way." Jessup took the strip and looked at Grant. "If Kells planted this, he has had men near our pens." "Then we watch the pens," Grant said. Evelyn looked at the spilled feed. "And we do not let him make hunger look like my fault." The answer should have ended the matter for the morning. It did not. Owen Maddox came into the shed with a cane in one hand and his left boot dragging half an inch behind the right. Evelyn knew him before anyone named him. He had Grant's eyes without Grant's guarded stillness, and he carried pain the way some men carried pistols, visible enough to warn people off. "Kells is at the lower gate," Owen said. "He says if Grant withdraws from the trial before noon, he will buy our hay debt and leave the ranch out of his talk." Grant's face closed. "You rode down to hear him." "I rode down because he sent for me." Jessup cursed under his breath. Owen looked at Evelyn, then at the rawhide strip in Jessup's hand. And because I am tired of watching one bad gate decide every day after it. The shed went too quiet. Evelyn saw Grant take the words like a blow he had invited years ago. Owen, Grant said. No, let the bride hear it. She ought to know the man who offers her safety has been apologizing to a gate instead of changing it. Evelyn did not flinch from the anger. Anger that old usually had a wound under it, but a wound did not make it harmless. Mr. Maddox, she said, did Kells offer you work? Owen's eyes snapped to her. He offered to pay me for the tally desk if Grant ruins this ranch trying to prove he is not afraid. And did you accept? I came back, did I not? Coming back is not the same as choosing. Grant looked at her quickly. Jessup made a small sound, as if he had never heard anyone speak to Owen that directly and live through it. Owen's hand tightened on the cane. You have been here one night. Yes, that makes me new, not blind. For a moment Evelyn thought he might say something cruel enough to make Grant step in. Instead Owen looked at the cut sacks, the rawhide burr, and the mare lot beyond the open shed door. Kells says Mercy should be sold before she kills someone else, Owen said. Grant's voice roughened. Mercy did not hurt you. No, you did. The words struck hard. Grant did not defend himself. Evelyn stepped to the shed door and looked at the lead mare standing in the far lot, head low, waiting for a punishment no one was giving. If you sell the horse to punish the man, Evelyn said, Kells wins twice. Owen stared at her. Mercy carries your accident in every flinch, she said. Grant carries it in every gate. Kells carries it like a tool. Which one of you gets to put it down first? Owen's face changed, not softened, but shifted enough to show the question had found him. He limped to the spilled grain and drove the end of his cane through it, pushing a clean line in the waist. Kells men use the old blind alley because it runs toward the wind. Horses think it is open until they are in it. Grant lifted his head. Owen did not look at him. If he wants ruin tomorrow, he will use that alley again. He will not try to beat your count. He will make your horses look dangerous before anyone counts. Jessup rubbed a hand over his mouth. You knew that and rode down alone. I wanted to hear whether he would say it plain. Did he? Plain enough. Grant took one step toward his brother. Why come back? Owen looked at Evelyn and there was resentment in it still, but less certainty. Because she is right, coming back is not choosing. Then he turned and limped out of the shed before anyone could make forgiveness cheap. By mid-morning, Mrs. Rusk's agency wagon rolled into Barlo Spur. She came dressed in black again, with her purse under her arm and a paper in her hand. Evelyn met her at the gate before Grant reached the yard. Juniper stood behind Evelyn, loose lead resting over the rail. Miss Hart, Mrs. Rusk said, you may still avoid permanent breach. Come with me now. Leave the mare against fee and sign that Grant Maddox failed delivery. Failed delivery, Evelyn repeated. It is the cleanest wording. For whom? Mrs. Rusk's eyes flicked toward the barn, where Grant had stopped in the shadow. For women who do not want their names dragged through horse pens. There was a time, not long before, when that warning would have found the tenderest part of Evelyn. She had lived respectably because respectability was often the only roof a woman could carry. But a roof that required Juniper's lead rope, her silence, and a lie about the man who had returned both to her was only another pen. If I go with you, Evelyn said, do you return my passage? Not with the breach unsettled. Do you return my horse? The mare is the settlement. Then you are not offering rescue. You are offering Kells' bargain with softer gloves. Mrs. Rusk colored. You will regret speaking that way to the woman who can place you. Grant stepped forward. Evelyn lifted one hand without looking at him. He stopped. That was the first time the yard saw him obey her. Mrs. Rusk, Evelyn said, I came here to decide whether I could marry Grant Maddox. I am still deciding, but I have decided I will not buy a clean name by handing my horse to the man who tried to steal her. The agency matron's mouth went thin. Then I mark you stubborn. Mark me present. Mrs. Rusk snapped the reins and turned the wagon too sharply. One rear wheel clipped the gatepost. No one laughed. That made the sound worse. Grant came to Evelyn's side after the wagon left. You could have gone, he said. Not safely. 4 days ago, you did not know me. I know the shape of the trap. He looked toward Juniper, then the mare lot, then the long pens where the trial horses shifted in the noon light. I do not want gratitude mistaken for consent, he said. Then stop asking fear to do the work of my judgment. The words landed between them. Grant took off his hat slowly. You are right. Evelyn expected relief. Instead, she felt the ache of wanting more than safety from him. Wanting was its own hazard. It made a person listen for footsteps and keep track of hands and notice whether a man smiled only when no one else could use it against him. That evening, he took the night watch himself. Evelyn found him by the mare lot with a rifle unloaded and leaning against the fence, more warning than weapon. He was watching the alley where Mercy had been injured. You do not have to stand here, he said. Neither do you. It is my ranch. It is my mare they tried to price. He accepted that. The moon was thin. Horses shifted like dark water beyond the rails. Evelyn stood beside him, not close enough for gossip, not far enough for comfort to be a lie. Tell me about Owen, she said. Grant's shoulders tightened. He was opening the blind gate. I called for a hard turn because Kell's men were watching and I wanted the horses to show clean. Mercy took the pressure, then another horse hit her hip. Owen stepped in. Rail broke. His leg never set right. Did Kell's men cause that run? I do not know. But you believe it now. I believe I let pride make me hurry a frightened herd. The confession was not polished. It had splinters. Then tomorrow we do not let Kells use your guilt as a gate, Evelyn said. Grant turned his head. His mouth moved, not quite a smile, but close enough to show he remembered how. Grant looked at her hand resting on the fence rail. He did not touch it. If we pass tomorrow, he said, Kells will not stop because buyers prefer my horses. No, he will stop when his men stop moving for him. You think men like that stop? No, I think their power stops when obedience costs more than wages. He studied her in the moonlight. You hear things under what people say. So do horses. A lantern flashed near the lower alley. Grant straightened. Mercy screamed. They ran. By the time Evelyn reached the alley, the lead mare was loose, driven toward the blind turn by two shadows slipping through the rail gap. One man vaulted the fence and ran. The other swung up and rode hard for the creek cut. Mercy struck the side rail and wheeled, white showing around her eyes. A rawhide strip dangled from her flank strap, burrs digging when she moved. Grant went for the gate. No, Evelyn snapped. She will break over you. He froze. Evelyn climbed the lower rail with her heart hammering. Mercy lunged left. Evelyn dropped inside the alley before thought could catch her. Mercy, she called. The mare blew and sidestepped. Grant gripped the rail with both hands. Evelyn. She did not look at him. Looking at fear made it bigger. Mercy, she said again, and made her voice the same as it had been with Juniper in red ash. Stand. The mare's ears flicked. Evelyn moved one step, then stopped. The burr strip scraped the mare's hide. Mercy shuddered. I know, Evelyn said. I see it. Jessup came running with a lantern. Lord help us. Put it down, Evelyn said. He lowered the light. One young hand reached for the gate latch, then stopped because Grant had stopped. For the first time, the yard waited on Evelyn instead of a man with a title. Mercy took one uneven step toward Evelyn, then another. Evelyn reached slowly, fingers open. The mare let her touch the strap. Evelyn worked the burr strip free with 2 fingers and flung it outside the rail. Grant let out a breath that sounded almost broken. Mercy lowered her head to Evelyn's shoulder. The yard was full of men now, silent except for horses breathing and Jessup swearing softly at the strip in the dirt. Evelyn looked at Grant across Mercy's neck. He will do it at the trial. Jessup picked up the strip. If he does, men could die. Then we make sure the men know whose hand holds the burrs, Evelyn said. Owen stood at the alley mouth, with his cane braced across the lower rails. No one had seen him come. Sweat stood on his forehead. His bad leg shook hard enough that the cane tapped wood. The side latch sticks, he said. Kells will cut rope instead. He always chooses what looks accidental. Grant crossed the alley, but Owen lifted the cane between them. Do not thank me, Owen said. I was not going to. Liar. For the first time since Evelyn had arrived, the brothers almost smiled at the same time. It did not mend them. It did something better for the moment. It put both of them on the same side of the next danger. Owen looked at Evelyn. If you ride in that pen tomorrow, do not chase the herd, turn Mercy. The rest will read her. I know. I know you know. He swallowed, and the next words cost him more. I wanted someone here to hear me say it before I lose courage. Evelyn nodded once. I heard. Grant looked from his brother to Evelyn, and the guilt he had carried for months no longer had the whole yard to itself. There was anger now and risk and a plan. The Remount buyers arrived at Red Ash before noon the next day, 3 hard riders with dust on their coats and no patience for ranch quarrels. They were not law. They were not judges. They wanted horses that could be ridden, paid for, and delivered without killing a cavalryman before breakfast. Kells controlled the big pen at the junction. He stood near the side gate in a clean shirt, yellow scarf bright at his throat, as if yesterday's dust had never touched him. Mrs. Rusk sat in her agency wagon under the cottonwood with her purse on her lap. 2 of Kells' wranglers lounged by the alley, knives at their belts for cutting rope and feed twine. Grant brought Barlo Spurs remuda in slow. Evelyn rode Juniper beside Jessup, not hidden in the wagon. She wore her brown riding skirt and plain jacket. No bridal ribbon, no borrowed veil, no sign for Kells to point at except the woman he had tried to price. He will talk first, Jessup muttered. Let him, Evelyn said. Talking is the safest thing he does. Grant heard and gave her a look that was almost pride. Kells stepped out before the buyers could count. Gentlemen, before you judge Maddox's stock, you ought to know he brought his domestic scandal into the trial. One buyer looked bored. We are buying horses. And horses read the hand of the man who keeps them, Kells said. Maddox took an agency bride under disputed account, refused settlement, and now expects you to trust his handling. Evelyn felt the old sting of being turned into evidence against someone else. Grant rode forward. Count the horses. Kells smiled, afraid to answer. Evelyn guided Juniper 1 step ahead of Grant. I will answer, she said. Kells' eyes gleamed. He had wanted that. A woman defending herself could be made to sound desperate if men were eager to hear it. Mrs. Rusk, Evelyn called, did I pay passage to Red Ash? The matron stiffened. You did. Did my receipt say my mare became agency property if a man disputed delivery? Mrs. Rusk glanced at Kells. Evelyn raised her voice, not louder than needed but clear enough for the pen. You do not need your purse to answer. One of the buyers looked toward the agency wagon. Mrs. Rusk's face hardened. The agency may settle expenses in cases of breach. Was I in breach before Mr. Kells put his hand on my mare? No answer. Kells cut in. This is women's bookkeeping. We have horses to run. Yes, Evelyn said, run them. Grant looked at her sharply. She kept her eyes on Kells. Unless you are afraid they will tell on you. The smile left Kells' face. For one breath, nobody moved. Then Kells lifted his hand. His wrangler at the side gate cut the rope. At the same moment, the second wrangler snapped a rawhide strip against the flank of the nearest bay. The horse screamed and jumped into the herd. The remuda surged toward the blind alley, a moving wall of necks and dust and iron shoes. The first buyer stood in his stirrups. His bored face changed before the herd turned. He had seen the strip. Gate, Grant shouted. Kells shouted over him. Drive them through, show them Maddox's horses run wild. Evelyn kicked Juniper forward. Grant reached for her bridle and missed because Juniper had already answered. The noise swallowed everything. Men yelled. Rails shook. Dust filled Evelyn's mouth. Ahead, Mercy fought the pressure, ears pinned, Old Terror dragging the herd toward the alley that had broken Owen. Evelyn leaned low over Juniper's neck. Take me to her. Juniper slid between two horses with a courage Evelyn would thank her for all her life. Evelyn did not try to stop the herd head-on. No single rider could. She rode for Mercy's shoulder, close enough to be seen, not close enough to trap. Mercy, she called. The mare's head jerked. Stand, girl. Kells' wrangler raised the strip again. Jessup rode into him before he could swing, not hard enough to break bones, hard enough to knock him against the rail and send the strip into the dust. That is my job gone, Jessup shouted, though he was grinning like a man who had finally chosen the cost. Grant took the outside line, turning 3 geldings off the alley mouth. One buyer's horse shied. Men climbed rails. Kells kept shouting for the drive. Evelyn saw the opening then, not the gate, the mind of the herd. Mercy wanted out of pressure, not into any particular place. If Mercy turned, the horses behind her would follow. Evelyn loosened Juniper's rein. Now, she whispered. Juniper surged. Evelyn reached across space and touched Mercy's neck just once. Here. Mercy turned toward the touch. The herd bent with her. The blind alley missed them by a horse length. They swept into the open half of the pen instead, circling wide, dust rolling like smoke. Grant closed the outer gap. Jessup and 2 Barlo Spur riders blocked the return. The panic thinned into motion, motion into order, order into hard breathing. When Mercy stopped, her head was beside Juniper's shoulder. Evelyn's hands were shaking. She let them shake where everyone could see. Courage did not require hiding the cost. Kells strode toward his wranglers. I told you to drive them through. The man Jessup had knocked against the rail wiped blood from his lip and looked at the rawhide strip in the dirt. You told us to get men killed, he said. I pay you. Not enough for that. The other wrangler took off his yellow scarf and dropped it at Kells' feet. The first buyer dismounted and picked up the rawhide strip with 2 fingers. This yours. Kells looked at the man, then at Mrs. Rusk, then at the pen full of witnesses who had not needed a court to understand what they had seen. A hostler who had laughed at Red Ash took 1 step back from Kells' shadow. Maddox set this up, Kells said. The woman rode out because he trained her to. Evelyn laughed once. It surprised everyone, including herself. Mr. Kells, she said, yesterday you called me rejected debt. Today you call me trained. Choose one lie before both fall lame. The buyer's mouth twitched. Kells' face darkened. You think a trick ride gives you standing. Grant rode between them then, but not to answer for her. He stopped beside Evelyn, shoulder to shoulder on horseback. No, Grant said. Her standing is not yours to grant. Kells pointed at his wranglers. Saddle up, we leave. Neither man moved. I said saddle up. The one with the split lip looked toward Grant. You still paying day work through trial. Jessup barked, if you can work without burrs. Grant looked at Evelyn first. That small turn mattered. It made the offer not charity, but a new order built after what she had done. "Day work," Grant said. "Clean hands. No yellow scarves in my pens." The men crossed the dirt. Kells swung toward Mrs. Rusk. "Tell them the debt stands." Mrs. Rusk clutched her purse. She had gone pale. For 2 days she had let Kells' money make rules. Now Kells had no crew around him, and every buyer at Red Ash watched her decide whether she would sink with him. Evelyn rode to the wagon. "My passage receipt," she said. Mrs. Rusk swallowed. "Miss Hart, perhaps we can settle quietly." "No." The word was not shouted. It carried anyway. "You refused me shelter at Red Ash unless I surrendered my mare. You called theft a fee. You took Mr. Kells' side while pretending to guard agency women. Settle it where you sold it." Mrs. Rusk's hand trembled as she opened the purse. She counted bills into Evelyn's palm: passage balance, return provision, stable fee. Every coin had a sound. "And the route?" Evelyn asked. Mrs. Rusk stared. One of the buyers said, "My sister's girl came west under that agency. I will be writing Cheyenne." Mrs. Rusk looked at her route book as if it had turned heavy in her lap. Mrs. Rusk closed her eyes. Kells made one last reach. He lunged for Juniper's bridle, as if the first wrong could be remade by force. Juniper stepped back before his hand landed. Evelyn did not move. Grant did. He swung down, caught Kells by the wrist, and twisted only enough to make the choice plain. "No," Grant said. Kells tried to pull free. Jessup and the former Kells wrangler stepped in on either side. The buyer took Kells' pen tally from the fence rail. He drew a black line through Kells' name, tore off the clean half, and handed it to Grant. "No delivery from this pen today," the buyer said. "Not from him." That was the visible thing: money leaving Kells' hand, men leaving his orders, horses leaving his pen. The story of Evelyn as debt died in the dirt where he had tried to start it. Kells looked around for one obedient face and found none. He walked out through the side gate alone. No one followed. Owen was waiting outside that gate. Kells stopped short. "Move." Owen planted his cane in the dirt. "I took your offer and brought it home." "You took nothing." "No," Owen said, "that is the point." He pulled a folded note from his vest. Evelyn had not known about it. Grant had not either. She saw the shock cross his face. Owen opened the note and read in a voice that shook but did not fail. "Tally desk at Kells' Remount after Maddox's withdrawal. $5 advance on silence about blind alley handling." Owen lowered the note. "I did not take the $5. I nearly took the silence." Kells' face went gray with rage. Owen tore the note once, then again, and dropped the pieces at Kells' boots. It was paper, but it was not proof doing the work. The work had already been done by horses, men, and refusal. This was a cost paid by the brother who had almost let bitterness hire him. "You are finished at our gates," Owen said. Kells shoved past him, but without crew, pen, money, or story, the shove had no power behind it. Grant released the breath he had been holding and turned to Evelyn. Dust streaked his face. His hat was gone. There was a small cut on his cheek from a flying splinter. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No." "You entered the pen." "I noticed." His eyes flashed with anger that had nowhere decent to go. Then it changed into something rougher. "Fear. I could have lost you before I had any right to ask you to stay." Evelyn's throat tightened. "That is why you will not ask today." He stilled. She held out the money Mrs. Rusk had returned. "This means I can leave." "Yes." "Juniper means I can leave." "Yes." "And Barlo Spur needs a clean Remount account tomorrow." A slow understanding moved into his face. "Yes," he said again. "Then drive your horses home, Mr. Maddox." He put his hat back on because his hands needed a task. "Will you ride with us?" Evelyn looked at Juniper, at Mercy, at the Barlo Spur men gathering horses without hurry now, at Mrs. Rusk sitting small under the cottonwood, and at the empty place where Kell's crew had stood. "I will ride my own horse," she said. Grant smiled then, tired and open. "I would expect nothing else." They reached Barlo Spur near dusk with all 40 horses and 2 extra men who had once worn yellow scarves. Mrs. Teague met them at the yard with coffee and a look that took in Evelyn's dust, Grant's cut cheek, and Mercy walking calm beside Juniper. "Well," Mrs. Teague said, "supper's stretched." Jessup climbed down stiffly. "Stretch wages too. I quit Kell's dirty work twice today, once before I ever took his pay." "You never worked for Kell's," Grant said. "I worked for fear of him," Jessup said. "Close enough." That was the foreman's cost, not a speech, a public admission before the crew he had led and the woman he had doubted. He turned to Evelyn. "Miss Hart, I put blame where it was easiest. I was wrong." Evelyn nodded. "Do not do it to the next woman who arrives tired." "No, ma'am." Grant watched that exchange with quiet satisfaction, but he did not step into it. He had learned, at least for the moment, that not every repair needed his hand. Owen waited until the crew broke toward supper before he came to the mare lot. He carried no note now, no offer, only a curry brush and the uneasy face of a man who wanted to do right without being thanked for almost doing wrong. Mercy stood near the rail. Owen stopped 6 feet short of her. "I used to blame her when my leg hurt," he said. Evelyn rested one hand on Juniper's neck. "Does blaming her make it hurt less?" "No." "Then it is expensive comfort." Owen gave a dry little laugh. "You speak like a woman who has counted coins." "I have." Grant stood by the water trough, close enough to hear, far enough not to steal the moment. Owen looked at him once, then looked away. "I cannot ride the trial line," Owen said. "Not yet, maybe not ever. But I can keep the blind alley closed and teach the new men why it stays closed." Grant's throat moved. "That would help." "I am not doing it for help." "No." Owen took one careful step toward Mercy and held out the brush. The mare stretched her neck, sniffed it, and did not flinch. That small stillness crossed the yard more quietly than a cheer and went deeper. Evelyn saw Grant's hand open at his side, empty and shaking once before he closed it. Owen brushed Mercy's shoulder one slow time. "I was wrong to make her carry my anger." No one forgave him aloud. That would have made the cost too easy. He stayed there and brushed until Mercy lowered one hind foot and rested it in the dust. The next morning, the Remount account began before sunrise. Evelyn saddled Juniper herself. No one reached for the cinch without asking. The new men stood by the rail, bare of yellow scarves. Jessup held the tally board but did not call the horses. He handed the board to Evelyn. "You saw them clean yesterday," he said. "You call." She looked at Grant. He stood by the open gate, one hand on Mercy's neck. His face held the question he had been carrying since Red Ash, but he kept it behind his teeth. Evelyn rode into the pale morning and called the first mare. "Mercy." The chestnut came through. "Juniper stays out," she said, and one of the wranglers grinned. Horse by horse she called the count. Bay gelding with left sock, gray with black knees, sorrel blaze, brown mare, scar on shoulder. She did not hurry. No one pushed her. The herd moved because the yard had changed around it. When the last horse passed, Jessup marked the board and lifted it toward Grant. 40 sound, he said, clean. Grant did not look at the board first. He looked at Evelyn. "Work is done," she said. "For this morning." "For this morning," she agreed. He came to Juniper's side, but did not touch the bridle. "Evelyn Hart," he said, with the crew close enough to hear and the south road open beyond the yard. May I court you while your horse, your passage money, and your road remain yours? The question was not fancy. That was why it reached her. She looked past him to the road. It was clear. If she wanted the coach, Grant would drive her. If she wanted Cheyenne, she had money. If she wanted no man, Juniper would carry her. Freedom stood there in plain daylight. So did Grant. Yes, she said, you may court me. The crew pretended not to hear and failed badly. Grant's smile came slow, after supper. After the evening water. Properly. Patiently. He took off his hat. I can learn. Evelyn believed him because he had already begun. The same lead rope Kells had grabbed lay loose over Juniper's neck now. No fist closed around it. She turned Juniper toward the mare lot and opened the gate herself. Mercy followed at a walk, calm as a horse with no old fear pulling her sideways. Grant waited at the rail until Evelyn waved him in. Only then did he enter. Evelyn touched the latch first. Grant waited until she nodded. Together they closed the gate behind the remuda, not to trap what was inside, but to keep safe what had finally stopped running.